We're going to kick off our rubrics and continuous reporting session now. We're split into two. This session is split into two. First, we have Samantha Vanderwerff and Lisa Thomson from Somerset College, and another fantastic Queensland school after that, with Sheldon College, Murray and Vanessa taking the stage. Again, we'll park all questions, please, until after the two set of speakers have finished. This stream will give you an insight on how your school can effectively use rubrics to support continuous reporting. Our rubrics have undergone a few changes in the last few releases. So the first half of this session will take you through how to set up developmental rubrics for quality assessment practices. The second half of this session will be focused on why and how you can use continuous reporting in your school. So, over to Vanessa and Lisa. Thank you.
Hi, lovely to see so many people interested in rubrics. They are so fascinating. We're obviously down from the Gold Coast, and it's a wonderful place to be in this venue with so many people at this meetup. My name's Lisa Thomson. I'm Dean of Information Technologies at Somerset College on the Gold Coast. Samantha Vanderwerff is very much my partner in crime in rubrics. In fact, I think she knows far more about rubrics than she probably ever wanted to know. So we're going to delve a little bit into what on its surface seems something quite simple, but I think as we'll go through today, we'll look a little bit at how that concept of digitising rubrics is really quite a big project and an undertaking. So that's essentially what we're talking about. As we said, we're Gold Coast, Somerset College. For those of you who don't know, I suppose for us, we're a school in the hinterland. We're an IB school. We've got a solid academic reputation. So I suppose for us, we're coming from that perspective of rubrics isn't trying to fix something that's broken. It's how do we ensure that we're really maintaining that real focus on what we're doing and doing well. And we've already had those rubrics in place. I think part of what makes our journey so much more challenging is that we're a 3 IB school. That means that we have PYP, we have MYP, and then we have diploma program as well for year 11 and 12. For our year 11s and 12s at the moment, our year 12s are finishing the OP system. Our year 11s are embarking on the new Queensland syllabus, the QCE. So we've got all these systems that we're looking at. How do we make sure and keep the integrity of each framework? So that's been very much part of our challenge, which I think. So we're talking to those of you that are MYP schools out there, Queensland schools, and those of you who aren't as well, and hopefully some insights along the way.
So as Lisa mentioned, 2019 very much for us so far has been the year of the rubric. It's not a word that I actually ever used, I think probably prior to maybe October last year. I should point out that I'm not a teacher, otherwise that would possibly be quite negligent of me to not really understand or know what that is. But now, sorry, this is quite speedy, yeah. Sorry, I have to make it slightly interesting. It's a little bit tricky to make rubrics anything other than facts and data, but here we go. So yeah, rubrics all the time. My day is spent building rubrics and transforming them, really. It's a bit of a transformation project I think we're looking at as we go. We've verbified the word rubrics. Where's Sam? She's out the back rubricising. And yeah, we are now definitely in the realm of the rubric at Somerset College, and so it's pretty exciting about where it's coming, where we're going to, and obviously the purpose of it is about consistency and expectation, and that's slightly creepy, but yeah, but it's very much where we're going, and that is a false statement. There is not one rubric to rule them all. The engineering of rubrics inside Schoolbox to fit all of our different curriculum needs has been a really interesting exercise, and one that we'll go through in a bit of detail in a few minutes. And this, I'm going to introduce you now to our motif, which is our onion motif, which you'll see obviously relates very much to all the different layers that we have. Oh,
are like onions.
Here we go.
They stink?
Yes.
No. Oh, they make you cry? No.
Oh, you leave them out in the sun, they get all brown, start sprouting little white hairs.
No. Layers.
Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers? You get it. We both have layers.
So rubrics have layers, lots of them. At times they have almost reduced us to tears. At times I think there is that element of, but they're complex, but at the end of the day they're about consistency too. So we're going to talk through a little bit of some of what our layers are as we sort of dissect rubrics and how we make them fit. I suppose at its heart really, can I just get a little bit of show of hands who is an MYP school that's in the room? Okay, so this has been, so I know I'm speaking probably to a little bit of a minority. I remember when it was 18 months ago when I was down for the last meetup and I sat in a rubric session hoping that I was going to get the nirvana of being able to go back and be able to transform what MYP calls criteria sheets into rubrics. And it was a fascinating insight sitting in on those presentations, which was so informative, but maybe understand that I think the complexities that each of us have in different states and different curriculums with rubrics is different. So for us, we know what our criteria are. We have generic descriptors that we have to put in. We have other challenges. So I think that's been part of what Schoolbox has been really working hard towards in the last few releases, is getting their rubrics to the point where they can fit any kind of curriculum model, and I really do commend them for that. So for us, our middle years is where a lot of our rubrics is focused on. So that's for us our year 6 to our year 10 across all our subjects. So each of the different subject areas has its own rubric. And so those rubrics then get marked out of, there's 4 criterion A, B, C, D. They get marked out of mark ranges, so 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, 7 to 8. Within those criterion, there are then 4 strands, 5 strands, 3 strands, depends which subject, depends which criterion. So you use those strands to help you determine a criterion mark. And at no time do you add up those criterion. So that was the really big challenge, I think, for us with Schoolbox, was because initially it wanted to always add them to give you a final grade for that assessment piece, and we don't. Within an assessment piece, they may only be assessing 2 of the criterion at the time, or 1, or all 4. But the golden rule is thou shalt never add up the criterion to give a final mark at this point. So again, as we can see, IBs come a long way, the middle years, for those that have now know that all criterion get marked out of 8. At the end of a semester or the end of a year, that gives a mark out of 32, which gets converted to that 1 to 7. So you can start to sort of understand the layers that we talk about in terms of understanding the MYP and what the rules are around the criteria and how they get used and what they do. And then to add that into the mix, we of course have our new system for Year 11.
So many Queensland schools in the room? Yeah, oh, they're great. Okay, woo. So the Queensland Certificate of Education is a 2019 change in the curriculum for Queensland, so that brings with it a whole lot of syllabus documents. Fortunately for our teachers, I guess they're not that, there's a familiarity between that and what they would be have been exposed to with the MYP and the IB documentation throughout their teaching. So there's there's assessments that are assignment-based, there's data tests, there's performances, there's practicals, all of those sorts of things come with prescribed instruments for assessment. So we are building those instruments of assessments inside, or the ISMGs is what they're called, inside Schoolbox. And it's really sort of looking at what we've got in MYP, looking at what we've built in there and how we can then make these rubrics work inside Schoolbox to fit the QCE as well. So the idea of, I guess, splitting open the rubrics and then matching them to the various curriculum requirements is where we're very much focused. And so we collaborated quite heavily with our heads of departments, so we put a spotlight on what their particular needs were. We had our maths teacher come down, and head of department of maths. He was really involved and engaged in having a look at the different requirements within the QCE for him and whether this would work for him and his teachers. So that's where we sort of started peeling back the layers and basically collaborating with our department heads to see whether this was going to actually work for them inside Schoolbox, with a view to moving into this continuous reporting environment.
So I suppose for each school, and I think this is some of the layers as well, because I think for each school, continuous reporting can mean something different. And even within a school at times, I think as we've come to understand, we can all feel that we're on that one journey, but we can have different perspectives, and those perspectives can make a real difference. So for us, our continuous reporting is something that we've been journeying to for a little while. And I think it's always there's always that push-pull kind of thing of where is the technology at, and you know you want to deliver, and this is a goal. And so for us, we've brought in Track 1. We use Track 1 for our learning analytics already. But just who's using Track 1 within their environment for, I know there's quite a few schools that are, and they're just fantastic to work with again. So I think that's for us really important, that partners are always really agile and willing to listen and work with us. And so that's part of it for us, is continuous reporting, is being able to give that feedback to the parents about the progression, how their students are progressing, giving that progressive indication, as well as the quality of the feedback. So last year, as Sam said, we embarked on Rubrics continuous reporting as our goal. We were having to do that little bit of wait and see, and Schoolbox was delivering what we needed for the middle years of not adding them up. Obviously for Track 1, we looked at engaging them, or as I like to say, we threw money at the problem. And we're very much in that stage where we've been building it in test, rolling it out in live, getting that feedback from our early users. As Sam talked about, really collaborative approach, and I think the way that Sam in particular is so accessible for heads of department makes such a difference for us, how we now start to move that forward, communicate, roll it out, the teacher training before it even goes anywhere near parents. Each school is going to have its own context and its own challenges, and for us part of it was that we wanted there to be the efficiency for teachers, that they were doing their marking and putting their marks in one place and it was ending up where it needed to be. And I think this is the context too that has probably unfolded a little bit the layers of the onion once again, is that for a lot of us, we've got those reporting systems in place, and we've often got people within our schools that are very attached to. There's a lot of work that's gone into building how we do our reporting, and we do that in synergetic with our mark book. So there's always that sense, always that tension of when you're bringing in something new, are you trying to sort of make things work within the current sort of context. And that was a little bit of ours, how we're going to get it sort of going. So as we like to think of sort of our three onion rings here of getting Schoolbox. Via Track 1, we've now got the marks that when teachers put their marks into Schoolbox, Track 1 is picking those marks up and pushing those into synergetic, into the mark books directly, matching up with the classes. So for us, that's the real win, is that we've got this user-friendly interface of Schoolbox where teachers anywhere, anytime, web-based platform can be marking, and that really then they're only needing to go into synergetic at the end of a semester to perhaps just look at things like the attitude engagement, because we're removing those end of semester comments, so that the focus then becomes on that feedback at the time. And so obviously key for that is that unique assessment code and the description that we've got in Schoolbox. So we've got a four-letter code in Schoolbox against an assessment item, and in synergetic against our mark book, so that's being used to match that up. So obviously that's going to be the little bit of challenge, just as we're still in that building phase, is looking at our exceptions, looking where it is working and where it isn't. So I guess for us, that's sort of our version of our sort of onion moving forward.
Oh yeah, this is the nuts and bolts part, the building of the rubrics. So we had to do a bit of tidy up in our course area because, as someone mentioned before, when you've got this sort of legacy environment and now you're wanting to do this with it, you realise the mistakes of the past that you couldn't have foreseen anyway, but now you've got to tidy them up. So we've had to restructure the way we thought of units, the way we were thinking of units, and the way that they actually need to work inside this is slightly different, but obviously quite critical. So we had to go through and make them units by clicking and make this a unit page, rather than us imagining it was a unit page. The manage the rubric criteria, Clancy mentioned this before. This is essential. It's something that I couldn't kind of wrap my head around with initially. I think when Lisa and I were doing this, it was probably over the Christmas holidays. I might have been in one country, she was in another. And then when I got back, we ended up calling Dwayne and saying, can you just explain it to us both while we're in the same room? And we sorted it out. So it was really useful to understand what the power of this just setting that up initially in your course structure means, particularly from a statistical point of view and analytics further down the track. Creating our due work items in the units, it's really difficult to get that information in a consistent format, and the importance of knowing which assessment item is due in which unit. So you might have a maths exam that really doesn't apply to one unit, but it still has to be housed inside a unit in Schoolbox for it to go into a due work item to be pushed out into a course. So there's a little bit of engineering involved to make sure that everything is consistent and matches, I guess, the curriculum booklets. So this is an MYP criteria where basically you're toggling everything on, you just toggle it all on, but you don't want to total the marks. So you can see we've changed our terminology to fit our language at our school, or the MYP language. So we use criterion and we use strands instead of descriptors and capabilities, and then our mark range is up the top there. And so we need to mark at the strand level as well. So the teachers are clicking on the strands clicking on the descriptors for each strand, and then they're applying their mark. So the mark range is up the top. This is where we get to sort of maybe put in our little pitch for that to be automatically calculated, or the logic being in there so that you could actually get an automatic calculation down there, not the last number that you click in the third strand or fourth strand or whatever it might be. And then the teacher can then go and change that criterion mark and use their judgment. So there might be some students who are sitting in a 5 and a 6 at a 3 and a 4, so they can go through then and change that to fit. This is the managing rubric criteria that we were talking about earlier. So that's at that course level where you're putting in the criteria that you'll be assessing and the number of strands, because we've found it's really difficult to clean that up once you've made a mistake, and we've made mistakes. So that is something that is really good to sit down and plan out prior to embarking on this project. I know there is a clean-up functionality inside that Schoolbox is sort of patching through now, I think. So this is the MYP, mark type none, and then you're toggling everything on. And the QCE is probably a much easier fit within Schoolbox, because you're just putting the total mark. It's a raw score, it's a percentage almost, so you can just put total mark, and then you're using a rubric. If it's an exam or a test, I'd take off mark per criterion, and then the mark range there as well, because they've got mark ranges within the instruments in the QCE as well. And so it just allows the focus to be very much on those strands.
So it is really about that feedback. We're getting great feedback already in early stages, and I think it's really just about, as always with change, it's understanding there's all these different factors, and I think each of those is really, really valid. Sometimes technology is easy and people are hard. But overall, I think we've got I'm just a little bit conscious of our time. We've built a lot of trust, and I think as Sam's very, very open in terms of the space where she works, and the heads of department teachers being able to come down and talk, I think it's just so vital in that process of them knowing and trusting and feeling listened to as well. So we just thought we might just finish up and wrap up, because I think we need to, with just a few words from some of our heads of department and on the process.
The assessment rubric inside Schoolbox supports the flexibility of the phases in the MYP language curriculum. It surfaces the criteria strands and allows teachers, students and parents to engage in the feedback process.
Yeah, the languages inside MYP is a really complex environment, and there's different phases within each class, and you've got to match the rubric to those sort of students and exclude them from assessments, but it can be done, which is the good news.
The design department have been early adopters of online marking within Schoolbox. With the addition of the rubrics into this platform has helped us immensely through timely feedback to the students, explicitly stating and noting what levels of achievement they are obtaining. Areas of concern, areas of improvement can be noted and given to the students as well. A follow-on effect of this is the workflow for our staff. Marking, generating reports, filling out criteria sheets is happening at an increased rate, allowing that feedback to come back quicker and quicker each time around.
And surprisingly, you might not think that maths and rubrics necessarily fits, but the maths department have been fantastic partners with us.
One of the benefits of using the criteria-based assessment in mathematics is that we're able to get students to have a really clear understanding about what it is and what objectives they need to meet. And one of the benefits of using the rubrics is that when we come to mark that work and when we come to assess it, we're able to see, exactly whereabouts the student has demonstrated a particular objective, and therefore we can make a judgment about whether or not that student has met the outcomes. It is fantastic in mathematics to be able to use a platform like Schoolbox to do this, because traditionally we've used pen and paper rubrics, and they tend to be quite laborious because we end up grabbing highlighters and things like that, and you do that sort of for every kid, and then you sort of tally up scores and you make a judgment and you get a result out of that. One of the most powerful aspects of doing it all online through a platform like Schoolbox is that we're able to get that feedback to the students almost immediately. So as soon as a task is marked and assessed, that becomes live, and then that feeds into our continuous reporting system, and then students are able to get that feedback straight away, as well as the broader community, parents and so forth.
So just really in wrapping up, we, as I suppose, are really true believers in that this project will bring essentially tears of relief for teachers. We're already getting early feedback from some of them that their marking is just really, they're finding it so much more efficient in terms of being able to work through the digital rubric. So we're very much strong advocates of this being a positive process, but it's not to deny that it's got its challenging moments as well. And obviously we see that there's plenty of potential as we look at rubrics in primary years with student agency, self-assessment, student reflection, self-assessment. I know there's a session on that as well. And again, I suppose part of the challenge is for us with bringing in task-specific descriptors perhaps as well with MYP. Thanks very much.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you, Lisa and Sam. We'll ask you to come back on stage for question and answer time. Opened up it's a big topic, and in 20 or so minutes, very hard to cover so much, but you did a fantastic job. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask Vanessa and Murray from Sheldon. Would you please give them a warm round of applause?
Right, good morning. Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait for the Sheldon slides to come up. Okay, here we go. My name's Murray James. I'm the Director of ICT at Sheldon College. I've been at Sheldon College for 20 years, a practicing film and TV and IT teacher, and that's what I guess I call my day job, and my night job is the Director of ICT job. So we're going to go through, I guess, our approach to the continuous feedback project. And I guess from an ICT perspective, we drive a lot of the ICT projects across the entire college. So whether it's, I guess, working particularly with Vanessa around our curriculum aspects, and particularly with iLink, we treat every project or every change in the school as a project, with a project methodology, documentations, meetings, etc. So that, I guess, that ensures that we are, I guess, aligned to the goals of the project, documented, and I guess funded by the college as well. So just some context about the college. College is just 20 years old. We do have 150 academic staff at the college, and 310 staff in total, and 1380 students at the moment. We're based in the Redlands city of southeast Queensland as well. This journey that we're going to talk about today is really, I guess, inspired from us attending the meetups over the last couple of years. And what we did is, I guess, as a team who attends these meetups, we went back and we say, what inspired you the most, from the meetup? And we have our OneNote documents. We're sharing all our ideas throughout the day. And as a post-review meeting, we sit down and go, what we would love to do was take on the challenge of continuous feedback. And the session that inspired us was Tim Barlow a couple of years ago, and his sharing of what he did with his school around the continuous feedback, and we took that on board within our school. And I guess this legacy, I guess, of what we're doing, talking about today, goes back to Tim and his session. And we hope today that we inspire you to take that on as well. Here he is, just up the front here, so thank you. So in terms of our approach, you can see on the left-hand side there, this was, I guess, our existing model of a reporting process, and the amount of, I guess, edits and things, particularly around comments on reports and trying to personalise the feedback at that end of the semester, rather than, I guess, changing that tangent. And on the right-hand side, I guess, is our workflow that we see now from the continuous feedback model, where we do have these junctures along the way, but we do focus on continuously giving that feedback throughout the term as well, not at just a point in time. So just to break down the existing model, I guess that sort of process and just to animate what actually has happened in the past and to where we're going from a change management process as well. And I guess we involved heads of faculty, a dedicated projects team as well, and I guess all of the support staff that we have around the college to be, I guess, invested in this as much as what we were as bringing it back to the college. One thing, I guess, as discussed throughout these processes as well, is really that feedback on a task level is really only there for a point in time. You know, it's not there continuously, and it's not there that's something that the parents in the past would have had been able to have insights on. And the conversation would just be at that point in time when the task is given back. And again, moving to an online space gives you a much greater opportunity to get that feedback continuously happening, but also there, and obviously as you involve the parents, you get a lot more conversations happening as well. And I guess what we saw, and I guess from Tim as well, from his suggestions, was around the parent-teacher interview process, where it was being questions that were about things that had happened, in the past, not things that were happening, and that were conversations around where we want to take the students and what the students best need for their academic program as well. So we took that on board and looked at that as a strategy for us as well. So in terms of the new process, what we did is we focused on the potentials. What potentials do we have, again, from presentations that we've seen? And I guess what are the key drivers from an academic perspective at the college? And these, I guess, the opportunities that we saw. We have this, what we call an opportunities whiteboard, and we write all these opportunities onto the whiteboard from a projects perspective, but also from individual projects. And as a team, we collaborate on that. What are the opportunities? What can we use as, our shopping list, but also our selling opportunities to staff and the academic team as well? And as we always say, whenever we take these projects on, we enter the rabbit's warren, and what we think we're going to be doing as part of the project just delves into lots of other areas of the process. And as you see on the screen there, we even sort of took the approach of modifying the reports in a great amount of detail for the benefit of this project as well. And obviously richer parent interviews were, I guess, another goal that we had as part of those conversations too. So in terms of our platform, again, Schoolbox, which we call iLink, and obviously Track 1, which we use as our analytics software, and then we're a TAS school for Webbook. And as discussed previously from Somerset, our goal for the project was to buy back time for teachers, to focus on their feedback of tasks to students, not on the marking and not on the end of semester reports. And where possible, if teachers don't need to touch Webbook, that's a great thing. If they're only going in there for a short amount of time, that's even better in terms of us. The less they need to touch Webbook, the better for us in terms of this project as a goal for them to buy back that time as well. In terms of the team, as I said, we treat it as a project. So working very closely with our Director of Academics for Senior College and the Middle College, and having key stakeholders from the heads of faculty team as well, where we had them driving, particular areas of the project. Again, just Vanessa and I with our teaching timetable and our other projects that we're driving. All of the team that you see on the screen there did this on top of their day job as a project that we saw great investment in for the college and benefit for the college, and key drivers in key areas of those spaces as well. And I guess each person brings different concepts and ideas and opportunities to the table, and then it makes a richer delivery project as well, as you have more and more champions come on board for the project. And we saw great value in having as many people involved at that initial stage, and then having key target areas for us to meet as well with that team. I know everyone likes roadmaps, so here's our roadmap that we invested within this project and other projects within the iLink space or Schoolbox space. And I guess particularly as Somerset said, changing to the new senior curriculum and focusing on that on the semester 2 last year to make sure that we were up and running and ready for our new curriculum for our senior college. And again, even things that we did in there from a projects perspective was pitching to the Hofs, pitching to senior executive, pitching to the academic staff as something that was coming, and putting the time and invested into them to get them on board very early and give them, I guess, the whole gamut of opportunities and the benefits of doing this project as well. And Vanessa will focus on one particular area of the project, which we saw great initiative from the staff in driving that within the project as well. So ourselves, we could drive the system side things, so we can drive the process side things, and having leaders on the ground to drive, the key deliverables around feedback, the feedback component. So I would like to pass over to Vanessa to kick off our research component.
Thank you, Murray. As Murray mentioned, my role as part of this project really was about to prove to our academic team the educational outcomes and benefits of such a big implementation and transformation at our school. And we delved into this project looking at what is the research saying. And this really forms our why. And our why is that, and this is backed up by Hattie's work, that feedback is one of the most influential learning processes on achievement. And I have a graph coming up that demonstrates that. But what's really critical in this quote here is that it's not just about providing feedback, it's actually about providing the type of feedback and when to provide feedback. And this is really a hallmark feature of our project, is the modes of feedback and when we give the students their feedback. So this diagram here demonstrates the impact quality feedback can have on students' learning, and we refer continuously to Hattie's work in regards to this, because we don't want to pour in money, time and resources into something that's not going to have any educational benefit whatsoever at our college. Another element of research that was aligned to this project was the college's investment in the arts and science of teaching, and Mazzano's work really explicitly demonstrates that what will I do to establish and communicate learning goals, track my students' progress and celebrate success. So as part of our performance appraisal process, we coupled this with the teachers' implementation so that they could see how they were growing as an educator as well. And the final element of our research that was backed up by this project was our commitment to the Australian teaching standards. And there's a phenomenal framework that you can find on the Effective Feedback site, which looks at unpacking how do you actually provide feedback to students so that they grow. And they have 3 great questions in this framework. It's where is the learner going, how are they getting there, and how do you know? So just to reiterate, our project was really, actually didn't have anything to do about grades or marks per capability or indicators. It was more about the feedback. In order to make that happen, we had to really flip what was happening in our school, and that was a dramatic change. So we removed all grades on a task. Students were not driven by the grades that they see on their task sheet anymore. We removed grades per capability, meaning that I don't really care where I'm sitting on this spectrum, but how can I move forward? How can I grow? And those conversations have transformed our practice at Sheldon College. We looked at revamping our report cards so that we weren't focusing on grades again, but more so focusing on the context of learning and then how the student can demonstrate, how the student demonstrated that learning and where their growth is at. So how did we get there? We got there originally by, as Murray mentioned, he came to the Schoolbox Meetup without me. So then he came back and said, now we have a new project on our hands. He was truly inspired by the transformation that Schoolbox can supply to us as educators to provide a platform for feedback. So we, very similar to the presentation you witnessed earlier, we modified or digitised all our rubrics from year 1 through to year 12. That was done simply on a Word document. So the Hoffs looked up their indicators, their capabilities, and they uploaded Word documents of their rubrics. In reality, they should already exist if you're providing quality feedback in your school or quality assessment instruments in your school, so that shouldn't be happening as an add-on for this project. But what we did for the heads of faculty were we assigned our administration task to digitise these rubrics for them. So our teachers did not have to do this. That was all done for them. Our teachers would jump on to a course page. So if there was a teacher of Year 9 business, they would jump onto the Year 9 business and they would find their pre-developed rubric for them with all of their capabilities and all of their indicators already developed, taking away the hard work from the teachers so that they focus on feedback, not copying and pasting rubric descriptors into a rubric. That means teachers had access to these rubrics at their fingertips. They were all proofread, automated, cross-checked against the syllabus. They were also consistent. We looked at an assessment piece from a Year 6 student across multiple subjects, and the language in the descriptors initially, before we digitised the rubrics, was very, very inconsistent. So this enabled us to have consistency in our language. Just demonstrating from the senior college what our rubrics look like. And we've now delved into the new senior curriculum for Queensland. And how did we get our staff there? Our staff were taken on this journey through a rigorous professional development program. So we created tutorials, both video tutorials, face-to-face teaching, face-to-face professional development and small workshops. On our iLink pages, or our instance of, which is our instance of Schoolbox, we provided step-by-step processes, how to access your rubric, how to assign it to your course builder, and then the other element which came back once the assessment item was on the class page was, well, how do you provide quality feedback? We did that at the start of the project, but we looked further into creating style guides for our teachers so that as a parent there was consistency around what would feedback look like. We have mandated modes of feedback, so what that means is as a teacher you cannot write great work or see attached, which is often can happen in some classrooms. But what we have encouraged our teachers to do, based on the research, was to use modes of feedback, one of which is the inline grader, which is a phenomenal tool for providing annotated feedback across the assessment item. We also looked at using a scaffolding feedback document, which you'll see in the Word document, so a teacher can get a scaffolded document, fill that in and upload that to the student's work so that we're ensuring they're targeting those elements. Where is the learning going? How are they going to get there? And what do they need to know? We also spoke about or encouraged multimodal feedback, so our teachers can provide audio feedback, video feedback, so that they're catering for the different learners, in particular in relation to the instrument pieces as well. And just to wrap up, I'm going to hand back to Murray in regards to how do we get this data from our rubrics and into our markbook so that teachers are not focusing on at the data at the end, but more so the process. So thank you.
And I guess from Vanessa's outline of the process, you can see how it's staged in projects, you know, so it's not just going to the finish line and going 100 miles an hour. Very carefully and a very careful approach and a target approach. Teachers, we want you to focus on feedback. We don't want you to focus on the rubrics. We'll do all the heavy work for you. And that's been our approach with Schoolbox in iLink since we first installed it in 2015. What can we do to support teachers so that they don't need to worry about anything else? In terms of the class markbook and the student markbook within track 1, I guess that's a focus area for us now from a moderation perspective, and where we have those collegial discussions around students and differentiation, that's where all those conversations happen now. And it's a very quick conversation. In the past it would have been, can you check my report, I'll check your report, and those conversations don't add any value to the student, whereas now our conversations in those meetings are around the markbook, around the differentiation, around what can we best do for this student moving forward, which are again much richer conversations for those meetings that we have. In terms of that's, I guess, a bit of a slide of the moderation process within track 1 that we do. Very quick for the teachers. You know, it's all pre-populated. At the same time, it's pre-calculated, and obviously then just the final submission that gets sent through to the report as well. Another teacher markbook component as well from that submission point. And what happens now, the heads of faculty, they approve these moderated marks, push them into our TAS system to go into our webbooks to streamline that process as well. And obviously when we do data checks in our TAS area now, you know, it's pretty much zero because all that data has been pre-checked, it's been moderated and it's been controlled from a systems perspective rather than manual input, it's all automatic input. In terms of any, I guess, and we would like to, as Tim did with us, we would like to pass this on now. If there's any further questions, we've just got an email address up there that Vanessa and I manage that mailbox. And again, we would like to pass on, as Tim did to us, if there's any conversations specifically around our approach to the project and continuous feedback, that we'd be more than willing to have follow-up conversations with you on any of those processes that we've outlined today. And I think that's it. Thank you for your time.
Brilliant, Murray. And Vanessa, thank you very much for that. Murray, I'll ask you to stay here, and Vanessa, Lisa and Sam to please join Murray on the stage for question time. We do have about 11 minutes. I do not want to get in between you and lunch, so we'll try to manage this 10 minutes, 11 minutes as best as possible. Roaming mic again around, so please put your hand up if you have any questions for our rubrics and continuous reporting champions.
Just a quick question. Thank you for sharing your journey. You've said that you've done the hard lifting for the teachers and just allowing them to create to get those rubrics ready to go. Who's done that, I guess, administrative task of taking from a Word document and putting it into the rubrics. Is that your good self?
No, we obviously created the exemplar rubrics. Our directors of academics looked at all of the different quantifiers that would make up an effective rubric. Once we had put all of those processes in place, the Word documents that the Hofs created were already proofread and checked by themselves. So the Hofs did a lot of that work, and we have a dedicated administration staff member who worked probably for a good term in digitising all of those rubrics for the teachers. We developed them so that they were year-long rubrics, but you only pick the relevant indicators that are appropriate for a task at a certain time. So you don't have to recreate the rubrics every assessment item. They were developed for the whole year.
Any more hands? We have one over here.
This is for Murray and Vanessa. In regards to marking, you talked about one of the processes was stripping away grades in that process, and then right at the end you were talking about the system that you're using, track 1, and the moderation, and then you can see the data there.
Yep.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? If the student doesn't have a grade and you're tracking progress in terms of progression points, and then there is a grade, can you just talk about the release of that information and how that fits your culture?
Sure. So the removal of the grades per task and the grades per capability was only at a task level or a rubric level. So the student, when they finished their assessment item, we wanted the student to focus on the feedback that was given. So they would see the little shaded boxes in the descriptors, but they didn't know if that was an overall A or a B or whatever that might be. That wasn't the focus of the conversation. It wasn't until they have completed that their term or their assessment where we then disclose, okay, after 3 or 2 assessment items, you are now at this position. So it wasn't focusing on the grade at a task level, but more so at a end of term or end of semester level. And they would only see those grades when they got the end of semester report, which in fact really don't mean anything because we're focusing on how they're progressing.
So sorry for a second part of the question, do you have any, I guess I'm talking junior school perspective here, but long term, do you see that feedback model moving into the way in which you present an end of semester report?
Yes, so the next phase of this project, we are opening up our Learning Analytics Suite to the students so that they can, we're looking at the academic mentoring module associated with that, whereby they can then see their grades, their progressive grades, but also align some goals to those grades. And again, the conversation around academic mentoring will be our focus, not around their grades.
You had an image to represent the proofing process, so that huge stack of paper, and that's what my school is still doing. I just wanted to check if, as you moved away from it, what is any kind of proofing process looking like now? So is there still proofing of comments on a progressive level?
Sure, sorry, I can't see where that question came from. Oh, excellent. So the proofing really now happens in our subject overview component. So every teacher, or if you are a champion for Year 7 technology, you are to write a subject overview now. That goes on the report card. That's the context associated with the learning. That then obviously needs to get proofread, but that's the same on every child's report card, so you can imagine that's quite insignificant in terms of proofing. In terms of our comments that go at the bottom of the rubric, the Schoolbox comment box, we don't do proofing of those comment boxes, but we have 3 things the teachers must do. Obviously look at whether their modes of feedback is effective. They then also have to use our style guide, and they have to refer back to the 8 Teaching standards around those 3 questions. We then buddy check, which is you moderate your colleagues' marking processes to make sure that there are consistencies between our standards in feedback and actually what's being presented to the students and the parents. So our checking processes are no longer proofing, but more so moderating and peer checking of our colleagues' work. Does that answer your question?
So, sorry. I've got a question for Lisa and Samantha. Firstly, we're really excited about the fact that we can do mark per capability because we are an MYP school as well, so finally we can have those grades in there. It's all very new as it's in the latest update. So
Yes.
the first part of the question is, does that show up in the grade book as different criteria marks?
Okay, so that's coming.
That's coming.
So that's coming. So we're really excited about that. So I think that's being built at the moment within Schoolbox. So at the moment when you go into the mark book, whereas if you'd normally were just doing an overall mark, you'd see in the mark book, you'd see that one mark. At the moment it looks blank when it comes in, but that is coming in that next iteration where it's going to be an MYP friendly. But I think part of it is understanding that we need to be looking at how that's going to be clearly represented for students on their grades page. So I think Dwayne's been fantastic in sort of having conversations with us around and understanding, really starting to understand what the IB requirements are. So I think we're getting some really good progress in that area, so it's good.
Yeah, so also thanks for clearing up the fact that we just turn off that grade type, or we do grade type to none.
Yes.
For that part. But the second part of the question is also, are you using generic MYP language in your rubrics just to standardise it across the board, or
Yes.
going task
So
specific?
where we've gone to, and I guess that's part of it. So when Schoolbox looks at the concept of rubrics, the idea is that there's a framework for rubrics, and that for each task you're building task-specific criteria. MYP does that as well. The idea is they give you the generic criteria, and then you need to show them, and then you also need to show your task level criteria. So basically, how do you put that criteria into words that suit that task while still holding true to it? So what we've done, because we still give them the PDF document, which is their task, as well as their showing each criteria on a separate page with the generic and the task as we're required to, when at the moment just putting the generic into Schoolbox for marking. We think one of the benefits is that students will get more and more familiar with what those criteria are, and they've got the others on the... But yes, it's part of the challenge, I think, of how do you, without crowding that space.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks very much.
Hi, my question is for Vanessa. I just wondered what challenges or roadblocks you faced in supporting students with additional needs in terms of accessibility, and if there are any strategies or processes that you use to support them.
So are you referring to them submitting their work?
More about
Understanding the rubric. So there are two things that we have done, particularly around students who may not understand the context of a rubric, but also we coupled that with our audience, which is also our parents. So we create a little video tutorials on what does a rubric mean, what are all the elements of a rubric, and understanding the modes of feedback. Particularly those students who require specific learning instruments or have differentiation around their assessment items, our teachers often use multimodal feedback so that they could hear the feedback or view the feedback. We have some teachers who not only annotate through the inline grader, but screen record their inline grader process so that the student can see what they're referring to, they can hear what they're referring to, and they have that visual. So our teachers are very committed to ensuring that the feedback they give them is appropriate for the learner and the learner's needs, just like they would if they were standing in front of the classroom.
Fantastic, thank you.
Could I just add to that a little bit, because differentiation is, I think, one of the very real challenges. And I think that the way within Schoolbox we can do the differentiation is fantastic. I don't believe, and I'm happy to be corrected, but at the moment with that differentiation we can put a different rubric against it. So that's something that is a little bit of a challenge, and that's something we're having to deal with even with our languages and how we do the different phases.
Beautiful. Thanks, Lisa. We have one more question over here.
Just a question for Vanessa again. This is a bit of a practical question. You mentioned that you have your rubrics uploaded in Word, and that there is some admin support that you have to enter those in. What sort of admin support do you have? Are these admin staff? Are they...
So our, what we call our Rubric Queen, her name is Tanya Wardle. She works within our Link precinct, so she's an administrator for our Learning and Innovation for New Queensland facility, as you saw all of our facilities in the project. So her role actually had nothing to do with rubrics. She just inherited that in the short term so that we could get our staff ready. But it was an existing role that then got a new responsibility.
Right, yeah, it's a conversation we're having at the moment in our head of faculty about, data entry and admin versus ownership of your role and your task, and just sort of trying to strike that balance. So
if you can find the right person in your school who has the right mindset, that's willing to implement a whole school project, I think it's very rewarding for them, and also the outcomes are phenomenal as well.
I have a feeling that's me. Thank you.